guys, welcome to the channel. My name is Ashley, and in today's video, we're gonna be doing a little travel guide for Los Angeles, but a spooky travel guide. So I've been to LA about 3 times, I believe. I'm from New York originally, I live in Pennsylvania currently, and I just took my, I think, 3rd trip there. So I was visiting with family, but I took a day to myself before I met up with them to just hit up a bunch of spots that I had been meaning to get to or that I didn't get to on my last trip to LA. And I think it was a pretty successful day. I hit up a lot of different spots, and so I'm going to share those here and the order that I did them in just for kind of logistics for traveling and driving throughout LA. So let's go ahead and get started. First of all, there are tons and tons of spooky and alternative things to do in Los Angeles. Obviously, a lot of people visit the city to go to the beach or surf or see the Hollywood sign, do kind of Hollywood celebrity type things, Rodeo Drive, Sunset Boulevard, all of that. And we did a lot of that as well because I was visiting family who had never been to the West Coast before, so they did want to see a lot of touristy spots. But like I said, I took my first day when I flew in, I rented a car and I just went and hit up all the spooky spots I wanted to see that I had time for. Then I went back and met up with them. So if you love horror and Halloween and you love alternative travel or dark tourism, then save this video for your next trip to LA. All right, so first things first, I flew in. Like I said, I rented a car as soon as I got there. My flight was delayed a little bit, which put a little bit of damper on my plans. I wasn't able to get to a couple spots that I had planned to actually revisit that I had already been to. So it's not too big of a deal because I have seen them before. So my first stop from LAX was Rosenheim Mansion, or the murder house from season 1 of American Horror Story. The house became hugely popular for tourists and lovers of the show, obviously once the show aired. It was about a 35 maybe minute drive for me from LAX. I might be a little bit off with that, but it wasn't too far. I think 40 minutes tops. And that was kind of the farthest distance that I had to drive throughout my day, was from the airport just to my first location. So I visited Rosenheim Mansion. It was super, super fun to see in person. Obviously, they still have that giant fence surrounding the property. And there was a woman on the porch who looked like she was working. I'm not sure what she was doing, but there were a lot of packages, brown box packages on the porch on a table, and she was sitting behind the table kind of like going through everything, almost like she was doing inventory of something. I don't know who she was. I didn't interrupt her or disturb her, but it was very, very fun to see in person, very sort of surreal. That was my first stop. If you know any of the history of Rosenheim Mansion, it is an historic home. It's currently owned by an actress and her husband, who I think is a cardiologist or some type of doctor. And actually, when they first purchased the home, they were unaware of its pop culture notoriety. They weren't aware of the show, and their real estate agent did not make them aware of that. So from what I understand, they bought the house not knowing that it was a tourist attraction, and then of course they were bombarded with tourists and breaking into the home, stepping onto the property, being disrespectful, and sort of taking advantage of the fact that the house was there and that they had some sort of access to it. They actually sued their real estate broker for not disclosing that information. I don't remember exactly what happened with the lawsuits. I did research them in the past, but the owners actually ended up coming around and sort of making lemonade with lemons and turning the situation into a good one. So they did eventually lean into all this tourist attraction and fanfare, and now they offer some experiences at the house, particularly throughout the month of October. They have offered giveaways to sleep in the basement overnight. I think they've held other events there, like paranormal investigations. It's really fun that the owners have decided to actually lean into everything. So that is Rosenheim Mansion, the murder house. My second stop after Rosenheim was Slashback Video, which was pretty close to the Rosenheim Mansion. Again, I'm kind of estimating here, but I think it was maybe a 15-minute drive from there. Could be a little off with that, but it wasn't too far. I headed over to Slashback Video. I found a parking spot on the street, no meters, no nothing. It was a side street, and I headed in. The owner was very welcoming, very nice. She immediately welcomed me into the store, asked me if I had ever visited before, and gave me some information about the exhibits, the shop itself, and then the sort of museum part that's in the back. It was $13 to purchase a ticket to that little museum in the back, which is really their sort of slashback video area that's made to look kind of like a video store. Collectible VHSs back there, horror of course. Then there are photo ops throughout the store. There's merchandise that you can buy. It was really fun to see. I've always seen people post about Slashback Video on social media, and I had never had a chance to go before, so I was really glad I got to be able to pop in. After Slashback video, I headed to the Museum of Death, which again was a pretty close drive, and of course I mapped out my trip based on the locations, so I kind of went through the map and saw what was closest to the location that I was at previously and kind of worked my way up north a bit towards Burbank, and then kind of came around back down again towards the airport. So the Museum of Death, I had been dying, no pun intended, to get to. Last time I visited LA, I had tried to go to the Museum of Death, but they were closed because they were moving locations. And then there's another one in New Orleans where I had done my bachelorette party, but I wasn't even aware of it at the time, so I missed that opportunity as well. So I was super stoked to get back to LA so I could go to the Museum of Death, and they were open. I was able to get inside this time. They do not allow any photos or videos inside, which is perfectly understandable. There is a lot of very grotesque, gruesome, and R-rated photography in there. A lot of post-mortem photos, autopsy photos, crime scene photos, and so if you don't really have the stomach for that, I do not recommend going to the Museum of Death. It was very overwhelming and a lot of it was very shocking. I have been to true crime museums in the past. I've been to the Graveface Museum in Savannah, which was very similar, and they as well have some very, very gruesome crime scene and autopsy photos that you probably have never seen before. A lot of them actually are not even online, and probably for that reason specifically is that they are very, very gruesome, gory, horrific. There were some crime scene photos that I had never seen before in the Museum of Death, as well as that Graveface Museum of the Nicole autopsy, as well as the Black Dahlia, ones that are just not anywhere online and were very, very, very shocking. Museum of Death has, in addition to those crime scene and autopsy photos, they have general information on different serial killers. They had a whole section on beheadings. They had a section on Victorian death and mourning, which is my personal favorite topic. They had an entire room dedicated to the Manson family and Manson murders. Again, there were some, I think there was an image of Sharon Tate in there that I had never seen that was highly disturbing. You just never know what you're gonna get when you walk into a museum like that. And obviously, if you're not someone who is interested in true crime and has never really looked at photos like that before, then maybe don't go into that museum. They also had other things like taxidermy and oddities. They had an exhibit on Nazi war criminals and their executions. So some different things here and there. After the Museum of Death, I headed up to the Mystic Museum. The Mystic Museum actually has kind of 3 different sections, which I didn't even realize were all connected and under the same store and ownership. There is the Mystic Museum, then there's Bearded Lady Vintage and Oddities, I think it's called, and then Camp Horror. So it's essentially one store with 3 different rooms dedicated to each space. Bearded Lady Vintage Oddities, if that's the correct name. I will put it on the screen if I'm saying it incorrectly, but they had obviously some oddities and curiosities, different things that you could purchase. The Camp Horror is sort of like a little mini horror museum with different mannequins and exhibits, and they switch out the theme every so often. So I think it used to be, there was like a slasher one that I feel like I remember, and then this time it was monsters. They have an exhibit that you can actually go into that is interactive, and like I said, the theme this time was monsters, like alien type things. It was pretty cool. They had like a gun that you had to shoot a target at to open the door to get inside. They also had a scream booth where you could test out how loud your scream was. It was pretty cool. And that was the Mystic Museum. After the Mystic Museum, there were a couple other locations within walking distance that I headed to. One that is just on the next block is the Horror Bodega. So it's basically a bodega but horror themed. Inside there were different kinds of candy, drinks, soda pop, all kinds of just like fun nostalgic candies and stuff. They had the Boo Berry cereal, that kind of thing, and then some different horror murals on the walls. And they had, you know, just a bunch of stuff. So it's essentially a candy store, a little like candy soda store, but horror themed. It was really fun to pop into. And then not far away from there was the Halloween Town costumes, and it's essentially a year-round Halloween store. So costumes, decor, inside decorations for your home, exterior decorations for your home, everything. I always love popping into a year-round Halloween store because there aren't too many of them. There are a couple in New York City that I'm aware of. There's one actually in, I think, Pennsylvania or New Jersey that's about an hour from me that I've been to before. And this one, I mean, those are the ones that I've seen. So not too many. I feel like we wait all year long for Spirit Halloween or stores like that to open. And this one was obviously fun because you go into it any time of year. They also had a ton of stuff, like just filled to the brim with decorations and posters and just anything you can imagine. After that, I had planned initially to head over to South Pasadena and go see the Michael Myers house again, as well as some filming locations like Laurie Strode's house and the hardware store, but I just didn't have time since my flight was delayed earlier in the morning. Otherwise, I would have headed back over that way. I have seen those locations before, the Halloween Hedge, but I wanted to get a second look at them and see them again. Didn't have time, so instead I kind of wound back down heading towards the airport, I guess. Maybe like, you know, not direct path to the airport, but kind of heading in the southern direction from Burbank. And I went to go see the Wallace house from Halloween and Tommy Doyle's house. So Lindsay Wallace and Tommy Doyle's houses from Halloween, which are very close to the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And the two houses are actually diagonal from each other. I have seen those before, but I went back to see them again, made some videos, took some photos. And actually, before I had gone to both of those houses, I went to the Los Feliz murder house first. It's obviously abandoned. It's a true crime location where a murder happened several decades ago, and it's been abandoned for some time. There's a lot of graffiti and broken windows, and it's actually under the Oppenheim group. If you watch Selling Sunset, it's under their real estate brokerage. So I am personally hoping for a Selling Sunset true crime mashup episode. And then my very last stop was Black Craft Coffee, which I kind of found out about at the very tail end of my trip. I didn't even realize that they had one out there. I actually heard another woman mention it to her daughter while I was at one of these other locations. And I thought she meant something entirely different because the only Black Craft Coffee that I'm aware of is in Salem, Massachusetts. But they do have one out in LA as well. And then in the back, they have kind of a few merchandise items that you can buy. It's not like a full Black Craft store like the one in Salem that then has the coffee shop in the back. But there are some clothing items that you can check out in the back. One other place I would have loved to check out was Caffeinated Coffee. And I think that one was out in, I don't remember the town that it's in, but I'll look it up and put it here. That one was a little too far for me to drive to. I just didn't have the time. And then one location that I forgot to add into this itinerary was Horror Vibes Coffee. So I went to Horror Vibes after the Museum of Death and before the Mystic Museum. Like the Slashback video store, I had seen Horror Vibes on social media and it looked really cool, so I wanted to check it out. I think I got the Bride of Frankenstein, which is sort of like a secret item that they don't have on their regular menu, but I think it is online, the woman was saying. The employee, the barista. They have a Frankenstein drink that has pistachio in it, but it's a latte. And then the Bride of Frankenstein is just the same thing, but a matcha latte instead of espresso. So it's basically a pistachio matcha latte. It was really good. So Horror Vibes Coffee was kind of in the middle of my trip. And then, like I said, I headed up to the Mystic Museum. Again, the order of my trip, just for logistics, was from LAX, I went to Rosenheim Mansion, then over to Slashback Video, then the Museum of Death. From the Museum of Death, I went to Horror Vibes Coffee, and then from Horror Vibes, I went up to Burbank to Mystic Museum, the Horror Bodega, and the Halloween Town costume store. On my way back down, heading back towards LAX, I hit up the Los Feliz Murder Mansion and then Tommy Doyle and Lindsay Wallace's houses from Halloween. So in the time that I had available, those are all the places that I was able to get to. I would have liked to have a little bit more time. I felt like I was rushing through the Museum of Death because I didn't want to miss any of the other spots that I wanted to get to. And I was on a time limit because I had to get my rental car back and meet up with my family by a certain time. So that was a little stressful, would have spent a little more time in the Museum of Death. I did have plenty of time everywhere else, I felt. Let me know if you've been to any of these places before and what other places you would recommend if someone's going on a little spooky trip around Los Angeles. If you are heading to Los Angeles anytime soon or in the future, save this for your trip and let me know what other places you recommend I check out next time I'm there. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.